rally underway this morning. Futures indicating a triple-digit gain at the start of trading, up 202 points on the Dow, up 9.5 on the Nasdaq, up 16 points on the S&P 500. Despite the fact that the number of coronavirus cases are surging in certain states, fueling concerns about an economic reopening recovery. But gains in Boeing are lifting the broader market. Joining us right now is Stifel chief economist Lindsey Piegza. And Lindsey, it's great to have you this morning. Let me kick it off with your expectations for the second half of the year. Larry Kudlow was on this program last week, and he said to expect a 20% GDP gain in the third quarter and a 20% GDP gain in the fourth quarter. You buying it?
Well, I do expect GDP to improve in the third quarter, but I'd look for a lesser rise, somewhere around 10%, just about half of what Larry Kudlow is looking for. And by the end of the year, it's likely that we do see the economy dip back into negative territory. I do have a lot of concern about lingering restraints on part of the consumer, both because of health concerns as well as lingering financial restraints. We also could see a very large second-round flare-up in the fall of this virus, resulting in perhaps further closures or a second round of restrictions, which we're actually already seeing, as you mentioned, in some states that have opened too soon. So I am optimistic that we will see a near-term bounce, but longer term, it's going to take much longer and a much bumpier road to get on a sustainable upward trend to positive growth.
So in that scenario where we go negative again in the fourth quarter or really reverse from gains in the third quarter, what industries do you feel will still be growing?
Well, I do think that consumers are still going to be spending, but it's going to be a different type of spending. It's going to be more reflective of what we saw in the second quarter. So consumers are still eating and drinking, but they're eating and drinking at home as opposed to going out to restaurants. We're also seeing consumers are still spending on entertainment, so sporting equipment, subscriptions, these things that we can absorb and we can incorporate into our lives more isolated away from the general marketplace. So I do think that these things that we've seen in the second quarter are going to continue to carry forward into the second half of the year.
Makes a lot of sense. Mitch Rochelle.
Lindsey, good morning. One of the things I'm trying to understand, we're uber focused on the quarter-over-quarter jumps in GDP, whether they be down or up. But if we look at it over a long term, does our economy, when it's fully back to normal, is it going to be at the point that it was before all of this started? So I'm less concerned with the shape of the recovery, but when we fully recover, if the economy is still going to be the same size it was before.
That's a great question, and it remains to be seen, but I am a little skeptical that we're able to just easily get back to a new normal, referring to a pre-pandemic growth rate of around 2 to 3%. I do think it's going to be several years before we reach that point, if we reach that point. And in fact, looking at the Federal Reserve's longer-term projections for the U.S. economy, they're also skeptical. Their long-term run rate forecast for the U.S. economy is just 1.8%. So even below that reduced 2% level that we saw going into this year prior to the pandemic. So there is this concern that as we struggle to emerge from this virus, there are going to be long-term resources, savings that are permanently depleted and leave us at a more retarded level in terms of longer-run productive capacity.
Wow. Now, over the near term, Lindsey, what are you expecting from the June employment report? It's due out this Thursday morning. We are expecting another increase in jobs. The economists are looking at 3 million jobs added to the economy. We also have some key earnings out this week, like Macy's. What would you say about this near-term economic data coming out?
Well, I think we're actually going to see some good news, if you can believe it, in the near term. Last month's report unexpectedly added millions of jobs. I think we add millions more this month. I think we're going to see around 2 million added with a further decline in the unemployment rate. Now, of course, we do expect the unemployment rate to remain in double-digit territory, but still a step in the right direction as we're slowly starting to put some workers back into a position of gainful employment. Of course, as we talked about, some of the largest, most populous states beginning to roll back some of their easing on restrictions, we could actually see a second wave of layoffs. But let's take the glass half full. We do expect an additional 2 million, maybe more jobs added in this week's employment report.
All right, we will leave it there. Lindsey, we'll be watching.